Greek Prime Minister Alex Tsipras remains defiant, refusing to accept the austerity measures demanded by the European Union. He has also vowed to come up with a deal that would let Greece stay in the Eurozone. The far-left leader says he plans to stick to the campaign promises he made. They include minimum wage increases and the rehiring of public workers. Tsipras says he won't seek an extension of the current bailout, which wraps up at the end of February. Instead, he wants a temporary loan through June to allow time for renegotiation. European leaders remain skeptical about the Greek plan. No one more than, of course, German finance minister.
I've been saying this for a long time. We did not force anybody into the program. The Greek government is now saying it was a big mistake. Lots of people in Germany can only indicate the facts. There is a program until the end of February, and I don't know how the financial markets would react without it.
So with those comments, you can imagine the markets not feeling well. European stocks fell on Monday. The Greek index dropped nearly 6%. European finance ministers are meeting on Wednesday to discuss their options. A potential Greek exit also has the British government worried. Prime Minister Cameron met with officials from the Treasury and the Bank of England to go over the potential impact. They discussed the contagion risk for the rest of Europe and also how to protect their own markets. But the British government believes that Greece and the EU will ultimately arrive at a deal. And for more on the next steps for Greece coming up, I'm joined by Steve Hanke. He's an applied economics professor at Johns Hopkins University. Good to see you, sir, and thank you for coming on to the show. We've got a new dynamic. We got a new leader in Greece. We got some new views, and everyone seems to be still kind of digesting what's going to happen. But he's made saying that he wants to renegotiate. Likely is this to happen?
Well, he's going to give it a try. So far, they've kind of stonewalled the situation. As the German minister said, no one forced Greece into this deal, this bailout deal that they got into. But also, if we go back to the beginning, no one forced Greece to enter the Eurozone. In fact, Greece lied to get into the Eurozone in the first place. They really didn't qualify, but they fiddled the books and they got in and fooled the people at Eurostat, and they got in. A couple of years behind everybody else, but they got in. Now Europe's got a problem because
well, here's the problem, right? I was talking to my producer earlier, RT, and we had this discussion about maybe it's better that Greece just leaves now, given that we're already having this conversation. People are skeptical of the whole thing, and there's not a lot of confidence in the market anyways. Why not get this over with? And even Alan Greenspan said it's only a matter of time, right?
Well, Greenspan said unless they have a political union, which means in effect they'd have a fiscal union and a banking union, and the thing will eventually blow up. And I agree with him. And the reason that will not blow up is because there's a treaty. There's a Maastricht Treaty, and the Maastricht Treaty indicates how much fiscal deficit you can run every year, how much total debt against GDP you can have every year. And of course, everyone has broken the Maastricht Treaty because there are no penalties really for breaking it. So there's a huge moral hazard problem in the sense that if somebody misbehaves and breaks all the rules, they assume that Brussels will bail them out. And that's exactly what the Greeks have done. And now they're holding the people in Brussels obviously hostage because, and the people in Brussels don't want them to exit, and the Greeks don't want to exit. Right. So we've got this standoff basically.
Professor, maybe you can help us here. For a lot of folks who have short-term memory, they don't realize what happened when the United States was on the brink of collapse and we had all this contagion issue, if you will. Now, I brought up contagion as well. Explain to our audience, so what if Greece leaves the euro? What does that really mean to the rest of Europe? I mean, is this just about Greece?
Oh, yes. It's everything's interconnected in this Greek, especially if it was kind of a nasty exit, which it probably would be. It would be extremely disruptive in Europe and in the United States, because the most important price in the world, and I repeat, the most important price in the world is the dollar-euro exchange rate. And if Greece left, the euro would sink and the dollar would soar, And as a result of that, commodity prices, of course, would collapse because all the commodities are priced and invoiced in US dollars, and if the dollar gets strong, commodity prices go down.
I was taught, and as a professor, you should know this, that when we do negotiations, you always ask for more than what you think you'd likely to get, right? Like for buying a car, for anything for that matter. In this case, Greece and the EU both seem to be standing on their ground, but we've heard through the grapevine that both sides are willing to compromise. Is there a likely scenario that they're likely to compromise?
I think the most likely scenario, I think Greece is kind of overplaying its hand a little bit. They're a little too clever by half, and they're a Balkan country used to dealing with Balkan kind of politics. So I think the situation's quite dangerous, but ultimately there'll be probably some arrangement whereby the debt that Greece owes will not have to be paid back quite as fast as it's scheduled to be paid back. And that would be kind of a compromise situation that I see as maybe a possibility. But as I say, the Greeks are pressing fairly hard, and I think they just don't have the firepower to press very hard, because the key in Greece is no one's looking at the banking system in Greece. And the banking system's in big trouble, and if people start taking out many more deposits than they already have, the banking system will essentially collapse, and the money supply in Greece will collapse.
Well, we've seen that before. We've seen that happen in history. Now, I've got time for one more, and I just want to ask you something, because as I'm watching Greece, they went through a terrible last few years. I think we all can sympathize with that. But the last couple of years, they've really made some significant progress. And I even think officials in Greece would say the same thing. This comes at a very strange time, because at a time when the economy is actually doing better, they might be in a position to make it much, much worse. Is that how you see it?
Yes, in short, I do see it that way. However, this business you alluded to, the austerity thing, is a little bit nonsensical, because starting in 2006, up until 2014. Now, that was a year before Northern Rock went under and the European problems developed in 2007. Greece, public expenditures have increased by 11% over that period of time. Now, that's not a lot of austerity. I mean, they're increasing expenditures. And then, of course, the economy has gone down by about 15%. So if you combine those two things, the size of the state has actually increased from about 45% to about 60% of the total economy is now accounted for by the government. So this is not austerity. We're not talking about austerity waterboarding here at all. They've continued to grow in terms of absolute size of the government and relative size of the government compared to the whole economy.
Well, certainly a very frustrating situation, especially for the folks there on the ground. Professor Steve Hanke, thank you very much. Johns Hopkins University. Now, coming up on